everyone, welcome back to my channel. The long-awaited video is finally here. I promised it would be coming. I promised it would eventually get here, and now it is finally here. I'm going to be talking about my law school application journey, how I got into Georgetown Law, where I am now, and maybe a little bit of what I'll be doing in the future. Maybe. Stick to the end so you can find out. And you're gonna wanna stay till the end of this video because you're gonna wanna pick up every little piece and nugget and juicy little piece, whatever it may be. I've done a brief overview of this on my TikTok before. It's on my Instagram. I have not done a full video. And so here that full video is. I do have my laptop here, but I don't have any notes. So I'm gonna close my laptop because this is just gonna be raw and unedited, and I'm just gonna go, maybe I shouldn't fully go from memory. I should have pulled some stuff up for you guys, but if I need to get any information, I'll just add it as like add-ins on the screen or something along those lines. So I'm just gonna start from the beginning. We'll put that there. I'm just gonna start from the beginning and go from there. So I'm gonna take you back to a year before I actually applied for law school, because I did do a gap year and before applying to law school. During my gap year, I worked at I don't even know the technical word for it. I don't even know like what if this is the technical, like what you would call it, but what I call it is a financial investment firm. But essentially we serviced registered investment advisors. So I was in the finance field, essentially. That's what I was doing before I applied to law school. I did know I wanted to go to law school, but because I graduated a year early, let me stop. Okay, let me stop. Let me stop and rewind. Okay, so I graduated a year early from the University of Florida. Because I graduated a year early, I had that year to kind of prepare for the LSAT, but I didn't intentionally take a gap year because I had planned to just go straight through from undergrad to law school because I knew I wanted to go to law school. But essentially that graduating early thing kind of just snuck up on me. I remember going in January of my junior year, going to the Office of Career Services or counselors, whatever, and they were like, oh, you only need 17 more credits to graduate or something like that, right? And it was like my semester was going to be 15 credits, which meant I could graduate that summer with just one extra class. And I was like, oh, well, thanks for telling me, okay? So what happened was I studied abroad that semester, and then when I got back, just graduated early. So that's why I had to take that gap year, right? Because at that point in January, I had not studied for the LSAT. I had not done any prep, and I talk about it all the time. It's so important to give yourself enough time to prepare for the application cycle, and at least that piece I did know. So that's why my gap year was born. So that's where I got the job at the financial investment firm, servicing registered investment advisors, and I worked there for just about the entire year before starting law school. So while I was working full-time at that financial investment firm, I was also studying for the LSAT, and I was also preparing my application materials. Now, I am the first attorney in my family. I am still the only attorney in my family. My family is Jamaican. My parents are Jamaican. My aunts, my uncles, all of them, they are Jamaican. So I'm also first generation American. So I was on the right track. That's what I was gonna say, because all of them were born in Jamaica, even though me and my siblings, we were born here, right? And so no attorneys in my family. So I was essentially going this applying to law school thing alone. Now, mind you, when I was applying to law school back a couple of years ago, do I do the math? 6-7 years ago, there was no TikTok, there was no like avid social media coaches, consultants, any of like this coaching industry. Consulting was a thing, but it was really more so like in finance, right? It wasn't in all these other industries back then when I was applying. And it was really just kind of like, unless you had attorneys or judges or someone in your family to figure it out, you were kind of going it alone, because even podcasts weren't big back then. People weren't really actively posting about the process and how to do it and how to go about it on YouTube back then, right? All of what you see now wasn't really in proliferation back then. So I was kind of figuring this thing out on my own. Like I said, the one thing I did know was that I needed to give myself a lot of time because I was going it alone, because I was starting from scratch essentially. So I started my application materials in July. I started my application materials in July, and this was even before I took the LSAT, because I took the LSAT twice. So I took the LSAT, I believe it was either September, November, or August, November. I don't remember, but right. And I had started my application materials in July. And this is what I tell to my clients all the time. Stop waiting to take the LSAT to start your application materials. And I'll explain why in a second, using myself as the prime example. So I started my application materials in July. And at this point in time, y'all, the way I'm deciding the schools I want to apply to is just so crazy. I don't have my clients do this. If anyone tells me they're doing this, I'm like, stop immediately. We need to change this. But again, I'm going it alone. I didn't have a myself to help me. I wish I had a myself. I would have thrown all my money at myself or the person who would have been me back then to just guide me, because like I've told you guys on this channel so much, even in college, even at that time, I'm all about investment. I'm all about paying someone to just help me get somewhere faster, especially if they're an expert and I'm not. So if I had that person, I would have, but I didn't. So anyway, the way I was choosing my schools now, y'all, the way I was like, okay, well, I don't like the cold. So any school that's in the cold is out, which you can guess it. Harvard was out. New York schools, well, Cornell was out. I don't want to go on the West Coast. My family's all on the East Coast. All West Coast schools are out. Like that's how I was choosing my schools, right? Like, where do I want to live, and where, and I did put in a little bit of where I want to practice. So I'm born and raised here in the DMV, and so my number one was always Georgetown. So, but that's really like how I was kind of going about it. The other thing I went about, which I do tell my clients they can definitely still consider, is extracurriculars or affinity groups, more to be more specific. So I did want a school that had a strong BOLSA, and so that was a factor that I was considering as well. And other than those two, I don't really think I was considering anything else, right? And that's a huge, huge mistake, because, so I'll tell you what I mean now. The reason you're going to law school is to get a job. And so by me, like, basing the schools I'm choosing based on like my type of weather and what I don't want to do, like I don't want to be on the East Coast, rather than focusing on the important things like employment outcomes, what I would like to do post law school, different things like that. I was shooting myself in the foot, but I didn't know that at the time, right? So I started my application materials in July. So by the time I took the LSAT, and I think it was the September LSAT I took, because now that I'm remembering, my LSAT studying was like fake LSAT studying. And I tell people that all the time. It was fake LSAT studying. And you know what I mean when I say fake LSAT studying. It's like you got the book open, but you're not really studying, okay? Or like you say you're studying for 2 hours, but you're on social media every now and then. And so my studying was fake LSAT studying. Absolutely not. And you should also start studying for the LSAT at least a year in advance. But anyway, so that's why I'm pointing out to you different things that I've done wrong, because I don't want you to take this as, this is the forest journey, this is what I'm gonna do. No, this was my journey, and I did it wrong. And that's why now I'm helping you do it correctly based on everything I've learned. So we'll get there, right? But so anyway, so I took the first LSAT in September. So I had already been working on my materials from July, August, and September. 3 months I had been working on materials by the time I took my LSAT, and my materials were pretty much done by the time I took my LSAT. So when my LSAT score came out in September, I could have submitted. And you know, now that I'm thinking about it, and I'm gonna see if I can figure this out, because I don't even remember if I took a September LSAT. November may have been my first LSAT. I may have done November, January, and I think that's probably, because now that I'm talking and it's running, I'm running it back, that's what I think I may have done. But anyway, so I think I did a November, January. So by January, November, that was 5 months, and my materials were done. 5 months, like between 3 and 5 months, between September and November, 3 to 5 months, I had worked on my application materials, and they were strong, right? At least strong as in terms of like what I thought was strong, which now I realize like they could have been a lot better if I had someone to help me with it. But point is, I did work on it for a significant amount of time. And so my score comes out in November. I believe it was a 159, which was 7 years ago. And so LSAT scores trend up, right? And so like based on the research and different things, like add 5 points to that, and that equates to what it currently is right now. That could be wrong, but it's something around there. So got that score, and so I applied at the end of November when my score came out, the 159, with my 3 to 5 months of application materials. My law school list was trash. I just told you I was choosing the schools I applied to terribly. The only school that I applied to that would actually align with my goals, as I would later realize, was Georgetown. And that's it, right? I believe Georgetown and Columbia were the only 2 T14s on my list. Crazy. So anyway, so I submit end of November, like early December. And then that's when I really start to kind of just like get more involved in like, guys, just a very brief interjection here to let you know that if you're applying to law school for fall 2025 or fall 2026, I have an upcoming masterclass. It's called How to Use Law School to Change Your Life, where I'm going to be teaching both groups of applicants exactly what they need to be doing to increase their chances of getting into a top law school. So it's going to be the step-by-step process. You're going to get actionable steps to help you in your fall 2025 or fall 2026 application process so that you're getting into your top schools with scholarships. So if you want to join that, the information will be in the description. It's toppingthecurve.com/masterclass, and your ticket is only $35. Okay, back to the video. Because I was really just focused on my materials. I was really focused on my materials in the LSAT. But then like once all that's done and out the way, then I really start to get more involved in digging. And that's when I start learning about big law. That's when I start learning about firms. And I'm like, oh my gosh. Like I just completely messed up my application cycle because I want to do big law and I only applied to 2 T14 law schools. And those schools are going to give me higher than a 50% chance of landing big law. And so I had decided right then and there that I was gonna wait a year and reapply to do the application cycle the right way. Because for me, based on my research and like factual research that I share with you guys and I tell you you can do all the time, the math wasn't mathing, right? Those other schools I had applied to, I wasn't about to take out 50 plus thousand, 60, 70, 80, hundreds of thousands, $200,000 in debt to not land a big job or to only have a 20 or 30% chance of landing a big law job. I wasn't doing it, okay? I was not doing it. So I was prepared to take another gap year and reapply and do it the right way. So I do retake the LSAT in January because I had just like made this realization in December. And so in January, after I take the LSAT, I increased my score to 160. And then I add in some more T14s, but at that point, it's late. I'm applying late in the cycle. The January LSAT score doesn't come out till the end of January. So I'm submitting the rest of like a few, I think it was like maybe Duke, I don't even remember what other schools, a couple of other schools at the end of January / beginning of February. I'm late in the cycle. Oh, and my GPA was 3.7, right? And so I'm late in the cycle. And so mind you, I'm still saying to myself, I'm prepared to reapply, but since I've already submitted, let me just see what happens, right? So anyway, so I start getting decisions back. Lo and behold, I got waitlisted at my number 1, which is Georgetown. And I'm like, oh, hold on a second, Georgetown. That's not what we're not about to do. So I write them a letter of continued interest. And then after submitting that, I get a phone call from Georgetown basically asking like if I would attend. I'm like, yeah, you're my number 1. So then they admit me with about a 50% scholarship. And I negotiate that scholarship up to like 98%, right? So close to a full ride to attend Georgetown. Obviously, I sign on the dotted line. That's where I'm going because Georgetown was my number 1, right? So just to recap that entire application cycle, 1, I chose my schools incorrectly, which is so important. I talk about it. I have so many videos on this channel. You need to choose your schools in alignment with your goals, in alignment with big law goals, in alignment with federal clerkships, in alignment with career flexibility and career freedom. That's number 1. Number 2, you need to give yourself enough time to study for the LSAT. Number 3, your undergrad doesn't matter, okay? I went to University of Florida, and the main thing that matters there is getting as high a GPA as possible. Number 4, I submitted too late in the cycles to the schools, and still then not enough, but to the schools that could actually get me to my goals. You need to start early enough in the cycle so that you can submit early enough in the cycle to really give yourself the highest possible chance of getting in with a strong application. I would say, and I say this all the time, the one thing I did right was spend 3 to 5 months on my law school application materials. Okay, so now back to the current story. So I get into Georgetown, and then I don't even think I applied to RISE, which is Georgetown's like pre-law program. I think I got an email like inviting me to do so, and so I did. And I remember I was in Jamaica, I was on vacation, and I wrote my essays while on vacation, and then I got in. And RISE was the best thing that could have ever happened to me. I have so many videos on it, like what to do before you start law school, what to prep, what you need to know, how to prep. And it's what I teach and share with my clients, because those pre-law programs are what are going to allow you to perform extremely well and do well once you're in law school, especially if you're first gen, but even if you're not, because law school is unlike anything that you've ever done before. So I do that program and I learned so much. And when you're in it, you don't even realize how beneficial it is. I remember telling the director of RISE, Maura Demoy, that, and I don't know if she's still the director. Well, she's still the director at the time of this recording, but I don't know how long she will be. I remember telling her, like, you know, I didn't realize how beneficial it was while I was in it. And that's because when you're in it, you don't really know anything. You really don't know anything. It's not until the end of my 1L year when I was like, oh my gosh, like the end of the first semester, excuse me, I was like, oh my gosh, like RISE taught me everything. RISE is what prepared me for this. And that's why I'm such a big supporter of pre-law programs. I've also seen their benefits in my clients. So I do RISE, and then I start law school, right? I finish in the top of my class after my first year. I was, I think, top third, somewhere around there. I get an externship with the Department of Justice. I land over 5, 8+ big law firm interviews my 1L year, work at a big law firm, my 1L summer. My 2L year, I do, again, that Department of Justice externship. I interview with all of the top big law firms that I wanted to in Washington, D.C. I accept an offer from another big law firm. I interview and apply. I learn about federal clerkships while I'm in law school, and interview and apply for those. I land district court clerkship and a federal circuit court clerkship. So both of them are actually federal. The other thing I did while I was in law school, but I started topping the curve. I started it as a podcast. And so on that podcast, this was my 2L year that I started topping the curve as a podcast. I interviewed admissions deans, I interviewed judges, I interviewed big law firm associates, big law firm partners, I interviewed recruiters, I interviewed government attorneys, honored attorneys, like just everything, like in-house counsel, like sole law firm, right, people who own their own law firm. I interviewed so many people on that podcast, and it taught me so much. And I was also, as I was going through it, learning like about everything that I was going through and taking all that information that I was learning from those podcast episodes, right? So not only was I learning about all the things to do to land the big law job, all the things to do to get A's in law school, which I did. I had A's in all semesters except one. So, right, and so I was learning all these things as I was going, but it was a struggle. Like, it was a struggle, right? When I tell you I was literally running myself ragged, again, because none of this information was readily available. Like, I had to make sure I went out and found it myself, but I was doing it, okay? Because like I said, I had set my mind to something and I was gonna make it happen. So once I knew about big law, like I said, I was making it happen. Once I knew about federal clerkships, I was making it happen. So all these different things that I was determined to do, it's not like it was easy or I plucked it out of a hat. I had to like do a lot of things along the way. A lot of things that I talk about on this channel. I have a video on career advice I wish I knew sooner, career freedom and flexibility, clerkships, big law. I have videos on all of that already on this channel, but these are things that I was learning, you know, as I was going through it, like how to increase your chances of landing these things, how to get these A's in law school, how to submit a better law school application. Got a chance my 1L year before COVID hit to do a little stint with, like, Georgetown had like an admissions program. I'm not remembering what it's called, but like, and then COVID hit, but like, right, just so many different opportunities that I had and was taking advantage of, and it was just teaching me so much. And so I was going through all of that, you know, while I was in law school, started topping the curve as a podcast in law school. And then during COVID, that's when TikTok was really born. And so I started just sharing all the information on TikTok for everyone to learn, because again, like this information wasn't readily like available just for people to have. And I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna start sharing it with people, because everything that I went through and had to struggle to figure out, I'm like, I'm just gonna tell you guys. Like, obviously at that time, TikTok was like a minute max at that time. So it was really, really short snippets, and I could only do so much. And then from there, so many people started reaching out and started wanting help. I was sending them to my podcast, but then people wanted one-on-one help, and then, you know, like all these things. And I'm still working full time in my clerkships. I'm like, all right, you know what? And, you know, and thus Topping the Curve from the podcast was born, Topping the Curve, the business. And since then, you know, I've helped literally hundreds of individuals get into top law schools, finish in the top of their class, land big law jobs, land federal clerkships, and make it so much easier for them, because I can guide them and tell them, this is what's important. This is what you need to do. That doesn't matter. This is what they're looking at. This is what they're not looking at. And all of that was born from, yes, my experiences and me having to fail and struggle and figure it out on my own, but also the investments that I made, which I talk about on this channel. So flying across the country or to the middle of the country, driving places, getting coaches, all those different things, but also just all the people that I've talked to, interviewed with, and networked with, not only on the podcast, but just in real life, and just all of that like culmination of knowledge. I haven't even talked about, you know, I had the opportunity to work with some different undergrads, do presentations for actually Georgetown Law, some of the groups there, and some other schools and stuff like that. And right, just all these different learning opportunities, and having the opportunity to now share it and help other people along the way, especially, you know, non-traditional students, underrepresented students, minorities, like just whoever wants it, so that they don't have to struggle their way to the top like I did, essentially. So yeah, and then Topping the Curve now at the time of this recording is a little over 2 years old, and has lots of success with all of our clients. So that's where I am now. Is I finished both of my federal clerkships. Of course, this is federal district, federal circuit. I am about to return to my big law firm, which I mentioned to you before that I had worked at, and now after my federal clerkships, I am returning. And from there, you guys will just have to wait and see what happens. But that is essentially my entire law school application journey up to where I am now. I hope you found this video insightful and helpful. And if you are applying to law school soon, either for fall 2025 or fall 2026, then you should definitely make sure you reach out or sign up for our Greats Application Accelerator community. It is where I give coaching to all of my clients. It's where they get help on everything from application all the way through law school, through landing the job. That information will be in the description box below, or you can just go to toppingthecurve.com. If you don't think you're ready to join it, that's fine. We also have some free guides. You can just go to toppingthecurve.com and get those free guides as well. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. And again, I hope it helps you or inspires you on your own journey. Bye. Oh, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Follow us on social media at Topping the Curve, and I will see you on my next one. Bye.